So, interestingly, there were four teams that had a chance to clinch this week, and only one of them actually clinched. And that, of course, is FC Dallas. And of four teams that was up for elimination this week, nobody got eliminated. Not even Orlando City got eliminated. I mean, I was coming into today thinking that Orlando City was probably going to be eliminated considering the fact that, they were below Chicago, who was already eliminated. And it doesn't take a lot for Orlando City to get eliminated. And yet, somehow, the result just go in favor of them, and they are able to stay alive for another week. They're still mathematically kind of not really out for the playoffs, although I think next week they would be mathematically out if they do not win next week. And the fact that I also realized Orlando City did not play this week. They were the only team out of the 23 teams this week that did not play. So, yeah, either way, let's talk about these games. And by the way, this was a very bad week for teams that were actually above the red line. 10 of the 12 teams that was above the red line this week either lost or draw. Now, granted, some teams that were above the red line were playing each other. Example, Sporting KC versus RSL, the Red Bulls versus Atlanta, Portland versus FC Dallas. But there's also teams that is above the red line that lost this week. And we start off with this one because LAFC were one of those teams that lost when they were above the red line. And this is probably the most surprising result of the week. And this is a game where it's pretty much what MLS is all about. Because you know how in MLS there's usually some sort of games that just does not make sense whatsoever and goes completely what you think was going to happen. And this one was one of them. I mean, Chicago with a 3-1 win against LAFC. Mihailovic, if I pronounce that name right, scored a goal in this game. It's his first goal this season. It's actually his first start this season. And I think this is his second season with the Chicago Fire, and he's one of the homegrown players. And he scored an absolute banger of a goal. I mean, if you haven't watched that goal, make sure you guys check that out because it was an absolute golazo by Milovic. And Nikolic, of course, scores the penalty, and then Katai scored the third goal to make it 3-0 at that point. Rossi with the only goal for LAFC, although to be fair, this shot by Rossi should have clearly been saved because he basically shot that one from an angle. And remember how I talked about in the Moving Forward series that Chicago had a lot of problem with goalkeeping? Yeah, they're still having some problem with goalkeeping. Although, just like I said in the Moving Forward series about how Nikolic and Katai are really the two only guys that can score goals for this team, what do you know? Nikolic and Katai both score in this game for the Fire. But overall, Chicago, they were definitely the better team in this game. And LAFC, they pretty much just had the same problem that I've been saying, which is their midfield is very lackluster. I mean, this is why I keep saying that, I don't understand why they don't decide to sign a midfielder in the summer transfer window, and they opted to go with a couple of strikers. And, it's clearly kind of seeing it now. And this is one thing I'm very concerned about LAFC coming into the playoffs, because when you do not have a creative kind of midfielder player that gives you the goal and you just have to heavily rely on Vela to potentially be the creative player, it's not going to go very well for you. And we shall see what happens when they do get to the playoffs, whether they can figure it out. But right now LAFC just clearly does not have a guy that can create those goals besides Vela. And the other thing about LAFC in this game is that they weren't very clinical whatsoever. I mean, Rossi could have had a goal early in the game, and LAFC should have been up 1-0 when Rossi was one-on-one with the keeper, and somehow he missed it. But yeah, it's back to the drawing board for Bob Bradley team, and they're going to have to try to get this right because, even though they're technically not secure for playoffs, they're probably going to go to the playoffs this season. But once they go to the playoffs, that's when the question mark will begin for them. But moving on into the next match, and Seattle, of course, with a much needed win against the Rapids. This one was pretty kind of obvious that the Sounders was going to win. Rui Diaz, who came back after an injury, got a brace in this game. Ladero and Victor Rodriguez scored goals in this game, and overall this was just a walk in the park for Seattle. I mean, the Rapids were never in this game. They never really looked threatened whatsoever, and yeah, it's a good win for the Sounders, although when you look at the game, and if you're a Sounders fan, you wouldn't be celebrating this game thinking that you're back, and that the resurgence kind of got a little bit interrupted in these last two games, and now it's back. It's Colorado, okay? And the Rapids are one of those teams that is having an absolute horrendous season. But moving on, DC United 5-0 against Montreal. Now, before you, when you click on this video and you saw this scoreline, you would think that I would be very shocked the fact that this was a 5-0 game. I would be saying, what the heck happened to Montreal? Well, I kind of am a little bit on that, but in many ways, when you watch this game, this didn't look like it was a 5-0 blowout for DC United. Montreal were actually dominating the possession, and they also outshot DC in this game, but the difference in this game was this old cliche of just, if you finish those chances, you are going to score those goals, and if you don't finish those chances, you are not going to score the goal. And in this game, it was DC that finished those chances every time they had a chance to score a goal, and for Montreal, every time they had a chance to score a goal, they did not finish those chances. But for DC, of course, 5 goals in this game. Acosta with a goal in the 17th. Rooney with a brace. Ariola with a brace. And how about Lucho Acosta? Now 17 assists this season. He has 3 assists in this game. And that 17 assists now means that he's the top assist guy in MLS. I mean, this was a guy that from the beginning of the season, he was having an absolute dreadful start of the season, but it just felt like in the second half of the season, he has completely turned it around, and he is just on fire, not only scoring the goals, but also making those good passes. I mean, it's hard to believe Lucho Acosta is the top assist leader. I mean, nobody would have thought that would be the case when DC United was struggling in the first half of the season. Now, granted that they were pretty much not actually at home, and they were still waiting for their new home to build, but really, just this DC United team, they are definitely going to make the playoffs right now. I mean, I know Montreal still has a 2-point lead over DC, but DC has a 2-point or 2 games in hand over Montreal. And when you look at how DC is doing in this stretch ever since they got their new home, they are just absolutely on fire. And I don't even think DC has another road game for the rest of the season. So all their game remaining is going to be at Audi Field, and we know how good DC United is at Audi Field. They're almost untouchable this season. And as for Montreal, like I said, yeah, this is not good, because now you only have 2-point lead, but you also play 2 more games, and now you just pray that DC United will drop 2 of the game. And that's another thing, that DC United has the luxury now. They don't actually have to win every single game to make it to the playoff. I mean, if they drop 1 game, they're still controlling their own destiny. So that is why right now Montreal is in all sorts of trouble right now, and you think DC has got this one in the bag. But meanwhile, moving on into the next match, so one of the 2 0-0 draws in this week between Columbus and the Union, and the Union, they thought they had a 1-0 lead in the 37th minute when Corey Burke basically, he didn't slot it in, but he tried to place it into the middle, and the Crew player basically hits it into his own net, and it looked like the Union had a 1-0 lead in Columbus, but they look at VAR and it looked like Corey Burke actually shoved Abubakar off balance on the develop of the play, and they of course called it back. And I do agree with the call. I think you can clearly see that Corey Burke grabbed almost to the neck of Abubakar and pretty much just throw him to the ground. And yeah, that is definitely a correct call in VAR. And despite the fact that the Union had that goal disallowed and they end up drawing this game, I think this was a good result for them, considering the fact that they lost the U.S. Open Cup just 3 days ago, and now they have to quickly go to Columbus and hopefully get something out of that game, and they did exactly that. And this is why I really think that I've been kind of saying that the Union, when you look at all the kind of adversity that they have to deal with, past Union team would just collapse. Which is why I've been keep mentioning why the Union's got to be careful not to collapse, because it just reminds me of those past Union team that just kind of collapse when adversity kind of hits them. But I really think this Union team is different. This Union team, no matter how much adversity they are facing in, for example, losing a cup final, they just have the resilience to pick themselves up 3 days later and able to get this draw against Columbus. And even though it wasn't a win for them, it's definitely gonna felt like a win for the Union after what happened in the midweek when they lost the US Open Cup to Houston. And as for Columbus, well, this has to be a very disappointing draw for them, because they had a lot of chances in the second half to potentially get that goal and get all 3 points in this game, but they couldn't do it, and partially due to the fact that Andre Blake was having just another man of the match kind of performance, having his just superior kind of goal saving kind of game that he usually have throughout the season. And yeah, in the end it ends in a 0-0 draw for both of these teams. And next up, TFC with a 4-1 win against New England. So, New England, where the heck was your defense in this game? I mean, the Revs, their defense pretty much went AWOL in this match. They not only gave up 4 goals in this game, but TFC probably could have had more in this one if they could have maybe finished a little bit better. Javenko, Janssen, Vasquez on the penalty, and Delgado with the goal in the 81st minute. New England actually took the lead earlier in this game with Panea, but after that, pretty much all hell broke loose for them in terms of their defense. I mean, their defense basically just they didn't show up whatsoever, and just like their playoff hope, that is pretty much gonna be disappearing very soon. And I wouldn't say very soon. I think they're done. I really think that despite the fact that the Revs, they still get a chance to play against Montreal. Yeah, Montreal is not the one that is controlling this playoff race. It's DC that is controlling this playoff race. And in a week that, they were hoping DC, of course, won, which DC, of course, beat Montreal, they also have to do their part to try to win their game so that they can get into that race too. But they didn't. They lost to TFC, and really, it is just pretty much playoff hope over for the Revs. And it's the same thing for TFC too. I mean, I know TFC, they won 4-1 in this game, and they had to win this one if they don't want to get eliminated from the playoffs. But yeah, I just don't think TFC is going to they are just very close from getting eliminated. I think the next game or the game after is going to be the one that no matter if they win or lose, they're still just going to get eliminated, depending on what other team does. But moving on into the next match, Minnesota with a 2-1 win against NYCFC. So the Loons are pretty much the Quakes of last season, where the Loons, for whatever reason, they always tends to win at home. TCF Bank Stadium seems like a fortress for them this season, but they just cannot win on the road. And I think if I look at the points total Minnesota has done or has got this season, which I actually don't know what exactly is the point total, and I should definitely know it, but I think they would have been right in the thick of the playoff race if they were playing last season. Because last season, I remember the Quakes just barely got into the playoffs, and I think they only got like 41 points and stuff like that. It was not a lot of points for them to get into the playoff. It's one of the fewest points to get in the playoffs. And also, everybody remember the minus 22 goal differential that we had to get into the playoffs, which was the worst goal differential for any team that made it to the playoffs. But unfortunately, this season, the Western Conference have definitely got a little bit better. And, you know, Minnesota, they just couldn't win some of those games on the road. But albeit, at least they're winning their home games, and at least they're giving their home supporters something to cheer about, which I think that is probably one of the reasons why that home support keeps showing up, because despite the fact that this team is very bad, those home supporters, when they go to home games, they know that they're probably going to get a win, because that's what they've been doing this season. And Angelo Rodriguez with a brace in this game. Warner actually got sent off in this game after a second yellow. And really, I think this was probably the first good game that Angelo Rodriguez has actually had in a Loons shirt. I mean, you know, this definitely has not been a good signing for Minnesota whatsoever. And I cannot believe Rodriguez is actually a DP for Minnesota, considering the fact that he's only have 3 goals ever since he arrived, and only 1 coming into this one. Wallace, of course, with the lone goal for NYCFC. And if you're NYCFC, yeah, it is panic time right now. I mean, yes, you're in the playoffs, but like I said in the beginning of the season, you know you're going to get to the playoffs. But the matter is that when you get to the playoffs, you got to make sure you win your games. And right now, when you look at what NYCFC and their form coming into the playoffs, it is not looking very promising. And it is not looking like they are going to get over that hump this season. And if they don't, I really think it's a big failure for NYCFC, because they had a tremendous start of the season. And okay, yes, they did had an unexpected mid-season change in their managerial department, but still, you know, you would think that they would try to get it together and continue to try to see if they can win more games and build some momentum into the playoffs. Instead, it's been the complete opposite. And if you're an NYCFC fan, you have to be very concerned right now. And that I really think this NYCFC team could be like the previous NYCFC team, which is one and done. But yeah, moving on into the next match. Another game, another blown lead for the Quakes. I mean, it is I'm getting so used to saying blown leads for the Quakes. You almost forgot that I've been keep saying that to Houston, that you didn't realize the Quakes have also done pretty much as many bottle job as what the Dynamo has done throughout this season. And, you know, it was actually the Dynamo who, you know, I've been saying that they've been doing a lot of collapses throughout the season. Well, this is one of the rare times they actually came back and win this game. And, you know, I'm really hoping that after this game, Tarbell contract should be teared up and he should just stay at Houston. Because there is no point in the world that he should be a starting goalkeeper for the San Jose Earthquakes ever again. This performance was a prime example of why we should clearly put JT in forever now. Don't put Tarbell in that goalkeeping position. I mean, in this game, first goal by Manotes, who, by the way, congratulations to Mauro Manotes scoring his 15th goal, which is now a record for the most goal ever scored in a single season by a Houston Dynamo player. That goal should have been safe. I mean, it wasn't even hit very kind of hardly, and it was hit in an area where Tarbell could have got it from his near post, and instead he basically let that one slide under. And yeah, if JT was in the goal, he would have easily saved that one. And then the second goal that we conceded, Tarbell basically came out to try to punch the ball from a corner. He does not get that. And then Thomas Martinez basically had an empty net to shoot at, which he did. And to be fair, I would also kind of blame Lima in this incident too, because he was in front of the post. He could have literally just cleared that one away, and unfortunately he didn't do that. I mean, he kind of partially blocked it, but it still ended up into the back of the net. But that probably should have never happened if Tarbell didn't just jump out to trying to punch the ball away. And when you're the goalkeeper, every time when you're trying to punch the ball away when the ball is in the air, you have to get it. If you don't get it, then you are screwed. And that was just a prime example of it. And just, this is one of the million times I've seen this season that Tarbell has missed a ball that is in the air that end up going to the back of the net. And to make a hat trick of Tarbell misery in the third goal, basically the ball was coming into the box. Tarbell could have easily just kind of catch that one to potentially not get into Kyoto. He doesn't. He didn't get to the ball, and Kyoto basically taps that one into the back of the net. I mean, just all three goals were all his fault. And again, I'm gonna say it again, and I'm gonna keep saying it until he is out of this club. Tarbell out. Okay? Tarbell out. It's not Starhay out anymore because Starhay is gone, but it is now Tarbell out because he's done. There is no way he should be our goalkeeper. He's not even a USL kind of level goalkeeper. So what is he doing in MLS? And out of all that, I can't even talk about Wando's goal, which now he's 2 away from breaking the record. And you know how for the rest of the season, the only thing I'm going to be happy about is the Wando goal. But it's just how pissed off that I am with the fact that, once again, Tarbell gets in this game, and this was supposed to be the game that he maybe has his redemption and try to redeem himself and potentially not lost his job. After this game, it's clear that he has lost the job and that he should never be a Quakes goalkeeper ever again. And I would be very shocked if he's going to be a goalkeeper for this game. In fact, if he's going to be the goalkeeper for these last 2 games, I'm just going to straight out boo him. Like, I usually don't like booing my own player, and it kind of feels wrong to boo your own player, but when you look at what Tarbell's been doing and how he's been playing, he's not only, it feels like he is just kind of like stealing a living right now as just a horrendous goalkeeper, and when you do that, you deserve to get booed. But meanwhile, moving on into the next game, and just to make my misery even more and make kind of my saltiness even more, the Galaxy got a clean sheet against the Whitecaps, and the reason why I am very salty about that is because this is a Galaxy team that have now got back-to-back clean sheet, and the manager that is in charge of this Galaxy team is none other than Dominic Kintner. I mean, this was a guy that I ridicule, and this was a guy that every Quakes fan want him out. He did leave 2 seasons ago, or not 2 seasons, but last season, and for most part I kind of laughed at him alongside with Ziggy Schmidt running the shit show for the Galaxy. But really now, the fact that he has kind of turned things around and that potentially the Galaxy are going to make the playoff and the Quakes are not going to do it, yeah, I'm obviously salty about that, and I'm incredibly even more saltier when Dominic Kintner is the manager that is going to lead this Galaxy team into the playoffs. But in this game, Zlatan with a brace in this game should have had a hat trick in this game. Zlatan, I'm not quite sure why exactly Alessandrini took the penalty in the 77th minute when Zlatan was sitting on a potential hat trick. But nevertheless, Zlatan with 20 goals, and this was just another game where it's just the Zlatan show. And Vancouver, well, say goodbye to your playoff hope. I mean, it's over for the Whitecaps in terms of their playoff hope. And really, I think when you sack a manager, we have seen so far this season that even when you sack a manager and a manager that you hate so much, it doesn't really work out in the very next game. It happened with Orlando City after Jason Christ left and it didn't work out for them. It happened to the Quakes, although that was a very unlucky loss for us when we sacked Starhay and put Roston in. And it's the same thing with Ziggy Schmidt when he left and Dominic Kinnear took over and they lost 6-2 against RSL. So, yeah, it doesn't usually work out when you do get a new manager straight away, and this was one example of it. And I really think the Whitecaps are just done. Like, you know, when you got rid of your manager, where, you know, I think that as much as I know a lot of Whitecaps fan hate Carl Robinson, I think they probably should have kept him until the end of the season. They should have at least gave him one last kind of hurrah before he go. I mean, I think nevertheless he was potentially going to be leaving this season no matter if the Whitecaps make the playoffs or not, but at least give him one last shot to get your team to the playoffs and see what happened after that. But yeah, moving on into the next match. So Portland, they drew 0-0 against FC Dallas. This is the second of the two games that ended in a scoreless draw. The big talking point in this game is the Richwell red card, and you know, it's really tough to call this one because I know some people are not happy the fact that this is a red card, consider the fact that it doesn't look like Richwell really he like, what happened was when both Richwell and Lamar was jumping the ball, Richwell got his left foot and he basically trying to kind of kick Lamar back, and you know, the referees see that as a dangerous play, and you know, Richwell were giving his marching order, and I understand why some people are angry the fact that, you know, it doesn't look like it was a red card, and it doesn't look like very malicious. And when you, of course, jump for the ball, you know, sometimes your arms or your legs kind of like are in kind of a weird kind of movement when you try to jump up. And, you know, I think maybe in some way this could have been a yellow card, but at the same time, you know, when you try to go up and you try to use when I look at it a couple of times, it did look like it was malicious enough that I would say maybe it's a red card. But then again, we have seen a couple of incidents where it's kind of similar to this and it was not called a red card, which is why I've been keep saying Pro and VAR, they need to be fixed in MLS. It's so inconsistent in this league that, you know, you're gonna have some instant where you think it's a red card, it's not, and then when you have some instant that it's a red card and it's gonna be a red card, and when you have instant that shouldn't be a red card, it's a red card. I mean, that is why a lot of people are complaining about Pro and also VAR. It's just so inconsistent with some of the call, and sometimes referee just does not get it right. And it's not just one time they don't get it right. It's every single game. We have not had a single week where we didn't have to talk about any controversy kind of play so far throughout all these games. There is at least going to be one game that has happened that will have a controversy play. But meanwhile, moving on to the final two games in the Sunday game. So the Red Bulls scores 1-2 against Atlanta. And the big talking point in this game is what happened after the game when Tata Martino refused to shake Chris Armour's hand. And obviously this is not the first time we've seen this before. I think it happened a couple of times. The most recent one that I can remember was in the MLS All-Star game in Portland, where the MLS All-Star were playing against Bayern Munich, and MLS All-Star, of course, won that game. They beat Bayern 2-1, and Pep Guardiola basically decided to not shake the manager of the MLS All-Star in that game, which I think it was Caleb Porter that was in charge. So, yeah, Pep Guardiola refused to shake Caleb Porter's hand in that game after that match. And, you know, I kind of understand why Tata Martino did not decide to shake hand. I think he was very angry about this result, and rightfully so, because this is probably the worst performance I've seen Atlanta play throughout this season. And for the first time in what seems like forever, and probably for the first time this season, Atlanta did not get on the score sheet. I mean, Almiron, Martinez, and Hector Villalba was completely non-existent in this game. The Red Bulls did an incredible job shutting down those guys, and part of that is also have to do with the pressing that the Red Bulls does. You know, the Red Bulls have always known as a team that love to press, and they really did a very good job in this game. They did not allow Atlanta anything at all in this one. And, you know, Danny Royer and Tim Parker with the goal in this game. And, yeah, who knew that the Red Bulls, even without BWP, can still able to get a win over a tough team. And I also heard the Red Bulls have now got a 4-1-1 record against Atlanta. So, in some sense, the Red Bulls actually owns Atlanta. Whenever both of these teams face off each other, it's always gonna favor the Red Bulls. So when this matchup might happen in the Eastern Conference Final, potentially, yeah, the Atlanta is probably gonna be a little bit scared about that. I think this is probably the one team that Atlanta do not want to face coming into the playoff, because they just do not do very well against them. And maybe it's also because of the style too, because the Red Bulls just, they're kind of a team that with this pressing that they had, whatever kind of pressing that they're trying to do, it always tends to work out so well that none of those big free player for Atlanta just does not really get into the action whatsoever. So, you know, credit to the Red Bulls and credit to Chris Armas about that. And also credit to Chris Armas to not really comment a lot about the shaking hand. He could have easily just said that Tata Martino kind of disrespect him. And that's the other aspect with that. I kind of feel like Tata Martino kind of disrespected him in some way, because, okay, yes, it was the heat of the moment where you're not happy the result did not go your way, but at least shake the opposition manager hand and just show some sportsmanship. Just show some kind of respect to the other manager that, you know, well done, you have technically beat me in this game, and move on from that. But, you know, obviously this is just kind of like round one, or I think round two, to potentially maybe a preview of what we're going to see in the playoff, especially in the Eastern Conference Final. But moving on into the final game of this weekend. So Sporting KC, of course, drew 1-1 in this game against RSL. Corey Bear with a goal in the 9th minute. He could have had a brace in this game if he would have just finished that one-on-one opportunity around the 64th minute. You know, Sporting KC, of course, got a goal back and got the equalizer in the 52nd minute. Aiko Opara actually got the goal in this game. And, you know, Opara, he just loves playing against RSL. I mean, you know, 4 goals in his career are against RSL. This is the most goal he has scored against a team is against RSL. So for some reason, he just loved playing against them. And overall, I think this was kind of a fair result for both teams. You know, Sporting KC, I think they'll be disappointed not getting all 3 points, considering the fact that they were definitely the better team in this one. Although Nick Rimando doing Nick Rimando stuff, which is saving some big kind of chances from Sporting KC and making big save in big situation. And overall, I think both teams will be happy coming out of this game. You know, Sporting KC have already clinched the playoffs. And, you know, with Dallas also drew this week, they didn't really lose any ground. And RSL, I think they'll be happy coming out of this, considering the fact that even though they did drop a couple of points over the Galaxy, at least they still have a 2-point gap over them. But now, if you're RSL, for the remaining of the season, especially at home, you cannot drop any points. If you drop points at home, then you are pretty screwed, pretty much. But yeah, either way, guys, that is pretty much it for the review of this week. Like I said, since nobody got eliminated this week, I don't have to do a second video talking about the moving forward series. But now, because of the fact that 8 of the 11 teams that is gonna potentially be eliminated this season is still not eliminated, or 8 of the 11 team that is still in contention of being in the playoffs this year that hasn't been eliminated. That means that with just 3 weeks left in the season, I'm going to be making a lot of moving forward series. I mean, those moving forward series will come out faster than the Quakes blow a 2-0 lead every single game. But yeah, either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.